Right, so leading up to the end of the year, I know we've still got a month left, but I don't intend to be getting too many actual videos up next month. A lot of December is going to be focused on Thankmas, and obviously a break at the end of the month, the start of January as well. So I want to do a couple of videos just kind of winding down the channel for the year. Like I said, Thankmas will be the majority of December, raising money for Samaritan's and the Crisis text line. So if you can hop into those streams starting the 1st, then that would be massively appreciated. But like I said, that's not starting until the 1st anyway. But we're going to wind down the channel with content this year, starting with ranking everything I read comics-wise this year. Not as much as last year. I don't actually remember how much I had last year. I know that this video was like nearly an hour long last year, so we may go over that, so get your snacks. But we may not. There's a lot of stuff that I'm still catching up on. I will say. So I've sectioned my books into 4 sections. Go figure. We've got books that I have only got 1 issue into, whether that's I dropped it after an issue or only 1 issue is out. I've chucked in Avengers Assemble as well. I know that's 2 issues in, but I don't feel like ranking it with books that are like 12, 13, 25 issues deep. After 2 issues, I haven't formed an actual opinion on the book other than I like it enough to read more than one of them. And then we've got books that I'm behind on, ongoing books that I'm behind on, or minis that I'm behind on. So ones that I'm more than an arc deep on, but I'm still a few issues behind, or even just 1 issue behind in the case of 1 book. We then have minis. I didn't feel right having a mini ranked alongside an ongoing series, but then I went with ongoing as the last books that we're going to talk about are going to be the ongoing books, the ones that are, or books that are 12 plus issues or 10 plus issues that are finished. Some have finished earlier in the year, and some are and then books that are still ongoing as well. I did feel like maybe I wanted to separate books that have finished, but there's only 2 of them, so I thought I'd chuck them in with, no, actually 3, but I thought I'd chuck them in with the ongoing books. But the first book we're going to talk about is, in my opinion, one of the worst of the year. And I want to preface this video with saying, when it gets to ongoing books, I found it really difficult finding a last place, because there is no. I found it really difficult finding a top place. I was tossing and turning between like 3 books for top place. What my favourite of the year has been, because it's actually been a good year for comics. I say this every year. Every year is the best year for comics because the medium is still going. It's still thriving. It's still... Well, thriving is not really a word. It's not really the right word. It's still going. It's still a thing that exists. Comics are still coming out, and they're coming out on time, and they're coming out done. So yeah, and a thing that I've found now that I'm reading more just straight up normal prose books, or regular prose books, now that I've started reading The Witcher and got getting ready to jump into some Brandon Sanderson right there as well. something that I've noticed is that the book community there's a little bit of snobbiness surrounding not necessarily graphic novels. Some people are snobby towards graphic novels because people always will be, but there does seem to be a bit of a thing between, like, there's something like Mouse, for example, would be held in a higher regard than, say, The Dark Knight Returns, or something like there's more snobbiness towards the superhero comic than there is towards manga, for example, and I don't get it. Maybe it's because of the way that the MCU has kind of portrayed superheroes, and people who don't really read comics seeing that as like, oh, that must be how they're portrayed in the source material. No, it is not. A comic book adaptation is different to, like, someone adapting Harry Potter, for example. And this is something that I will get into much deeper in a different video, because it is something that I feel very strongly about. Comic book adaptions are not adaptions. They're taking the character and they're making a new story with that character. If a movie, for example, Captain America the Winter Soldier, is probably the most faithful adaptation of a comic book storyline to film there has been, like, in live action anyway. That being said, it's still not the book, because A, Iron Man's not in the movie, but he's in the book. B, how we get there, how we get to the Cosmic Cube isn't a thing in the Winter Soldier movie. It's a big part of the Winter Soldier comic. Big part of that arc. So yeah, I feel like there's snobbiness there that I personally don't like. I personally don't like this thing of, I don't like the segregation of mediums, essentially, because at the end of the day, these are still books. Yes, they've got drawings in them, but they're still art at the end of the day, and I don't think you can kind of just throw one away because it's got a guy in tights or a woman in tights in it. You can have as deep a conversation about comic book medium as you can have about books. There can be as deep a conversation about Batman, about Superman, about Spider-Man as there can be about Geralt, about Kaladin from the Stormlight Archive. You know, that's just my 2 cents about it anyway. I don't think just because the movies are these things are what they are now does not necessarily disregard comic books in general as a medium and as, like, art in their own regard. That being said, we're going to talk about Predator versus Black Panther #1. This is by far the worst comic I've read this year. Too much switching up artists. It doesn't make sense why the Predator would be going after Black Panther. Benjamin Percy has been a writer that I have always had mixed things about. I didn't care much for his Ghost Rider. I don't care much for anyone's Ghost Rider. I just think he's a cool tattoo more than anything. But apparently his Predator versus Wolverine was good, and he seems to care about the Predator, and I hope Predator vs. Spider-Man is good. It has a consistent artist all the way through, which is more than I can say for the other ones. Certainly more than I could say for this. But this is not for me. I'm judging by how many people bought this. I don't think it was for many other people either. I just don't think Black Panther he's not the first character I would have chosen for the Predator to go up against. He wasn't the first character for Marvel to choose for the Predator to go up against either. They chose Wolverine. I just think maybe going after Punisher, maybe going after Blade would have been cool as well. Maybe even... I do think the Spider-Man one is a good idea because I'd like to see how the Predator or the Predators will work around the Spider Sense and how they will figure that out. I read the first issue of Blood Hunt Dracula, and I didn't continue it even though it was 3 issues, mainly because I just couldn't find the next 2. But also, this wasn't great, in my opinion. I didn't like this first issue as an issue in general, and I loved Blood Hunt. I'm going to talk about that later in the video, but this as a tie-in, I'm not big on tie-ins in general anymore, really, because it's just, a lot of the time it's just money that you could spend on other things, for lack of a better term, for lack of better words. But yeah, I thought I'd give this a go because Dracula was cool in the Blade book last year, and I thought this would have more to do with what was going on in Blood Hunt than it actually did, because it is featuring Blade's daughter as well. But yeah, it didn't really... If it did end up getting interesting, and if it did end up getting good, I'm sure there's a trade collecting all of the Blood Hunt tie-ins anyway. But yeah, we then have 2 books that are 1 issue deep as of November going into December. I'm going to talk about Blade #1. This is a sequel, a quasi-sequel somewhat to the Blade book last year. It's more of a sequel to Blood Hunt. It's just, how is Blade going to deal with, and what is his mental state post Blood Hunt, post being taken over, post, essentially creating a vampire apocalypse. I really liked this first issue. It's only 5. The book's only going to be 5, and it is a red band book as well, and it's not doing the stupid thing of having one book come out and then having another red band edition, which I really don't like, because at the end of the day, that's just wasting paper. Like, why not just have the book come out as the red band edition anyway, like you're doing here? And why are you picking and choosing what books to do that with? Like, why does Blood Hunt get to come out essentially twice? Just one of them's got a few more pages with a bit more blood on it. And Wolverine Revenge, why does that come out twice? But Blade just gets a red band edition anyway. There's an Elektra book coming out next year that's going to be a red band edition as well. But yeah, I really dug this first issue, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I always like Blade getting a book. I really liked the last one from Brian Hill. Brian Hill's just smashing it out of the park with everything that he's doing, it seems like. Ultimate Black Panther continues to be really good as well. I will talk about that later on in the video as well. Black Lightning I thought I'd pick up as well, to try it out. I liked the show. I liked most of the show, and I liked Jefferson Pierce as a character in it. And, characters like Black Lightning rarely ever get a book, so when they do, I like to support these smaller characters anyway. I'm always reading Hawkman when he gets a book. A load of like D tier characters just got books at DC anyway, so I'm probably gonna check them out like systematically. And then Justice League Unlimited came out last week, so I'm probably gonna check that out as well. I really like the artwork in this. I have to read more to see if I love the story. I'm not quite sold yet, and some of this, I think this is going to make more sense paired with other DC books, and especially paired with that Justice League book as well. And we have what is 2 issues in, but I didn't feel like ranking it with books that are like deeper in than it, even though this is a mini anyway. Avengers Assemble. I didn't love the first issue. I liked the second issue more. But yeah, I think I'm gonna finish this because it's a mini anyways. But I'm not 100% on board with the story that's going on. What I am on board with is the character interactions and the stuff when they are back in the mansion. I've wanted the Avengers Mansion to be a thing in Avengers comics again for a while, and it happening in this is kind of giving it's giving the vibe of New Avengers, the team with Wolverine and Spider-Man. It seems like a more light-hearted buddy Avengers book, and I really like that idea. So we'll see what happens in that book going forward. Now we have books that I'm behind on. Before I do that, I will stop the recording and then come back in a couple minutes anyways. It'll be no time for you guys, but it'll be a couple minutes for me. But yeah, Geronimo? Right, we are back. So weird. I'm gonna look schizophrenic in the video when I say we're back after like a second of downtime. There's gonna be like a weird like jump cut, and then I'm gonna be looking and then so I'm just gonna look mental. I'm gonna look absolutely mental. But we're going to talk about the books that I'm behind on, not the books that I'm like only 1 issue into. We're going to talk about the books that I'm behind on, that I'm more than a good few issues in. And we're talking about a book that I'm nearly finished with. It actually finished earlier on in the year, but the last issue is just evading me for whatever reason. It's Avengers Twilight. This book would be very high on my minis list if I had that last issue, and if the book sticks the landing as well. I don't know. I haven't read the last issue. I don't know. But I hope the last issue of this is great, because the whole series has been great, and it's very appropriate considering that the Red Skull is the villain of this, and the whole point of this book is the Red Skull, or not the Red Skull, but Tony Stark's son is president of the United States, and he's kind of turned it into a totalitarian secret police state, and the Red Skull has been pretending to be Jarvis and all of this stuff. And obviously with current political goings on in America at the moment, this book is very appropriate for what is going on at the moment. And probably, I don't know how it came out during an election year, to be honest. But that being said, this book would be very high if I had it finished. But I unfortunately don't have the last issue, so it's going to have to be here. But I will sing this book's praises to high heaven even more now, since it basically predicted the election. Thank God I'm not American. Thank God I don't live in America. Another thing that kind of weirdly is appropriate towards the political state in America is absolute power. I'm missing issues 3 and 4 of this, but this is brilliant. This is the best that comics can be. This is what an event should be. Absolute power. The whole universe being affected, genuine stakes, things that feel like they will be long-lasting, and things that will be long-lasting now that we are done with it, essentially. Again, I haven't finished the event. I haven't finished the 4-issue main mini series for it, but I know that a book is going to be good from basically issue 1. And this being a mini and only being 4 issues, I know that there will probably be a decent consistency in quality. If not that, at least Dan Mora is on every issue, so I trust that his artwork is always going to be good, and thank God he's on Superman now, so that I have a reason to have him in my pull list for the best part of however long he's on Superman for. But yeah, this is great, and I am so excited to get it done, and I'm really excited for the future of the DC universe, because it looks very bright with stuff that's going on in Absolute, which I haven't started yet, but I've heard only good things from it. The new initiative, Black Lightning, was genuinely very good. That first issue was genuinely quite good. I just haven't quite gotten a direction from it yet. I just know that it's written well, it's drawn very well, but I want to see what the direction for that book actually is. But yeah, and I'm very excited for what the Justice League book will end up being, because it is called Justice League Unlimited because of that show that we all know and love. And I'm hoping that DC Comics start reflecting the animated Justice League series is more so, and start going towards that tone, because that seems like what the movies are going to do. That seems like what James Gunn is looking towards doing. And I know there's been discourse on some of the decisions that James Gunn has made. I still trust that the books will, that the products that he will make will at least be entertaining and at least be better than whatever Zack Snyder was doing, because God, what was he doing? But I trust that his films, the films that he makes and the films that he attaches his name to, will at least be entertaining, because everything he's done in the past, bar like one movie, I think, has been great. Peacemaker made me fall in love with a character that I thought was an asshole. Suicide Squad made me fall in love with characters that I didn't really care about beforehand, and it single-handedly saved the Suicide Squad in my mind as a pop culture thing, because that old movie was for emo teenage girls, the 2016 one, and this one was for people who enjoy watching good movies. the 2021 one. But that's enough of that. Let's talk about Vengeance of the Moon Knight. I'm so behind on this. It's not called Vengeance of the Moon Knight anymore. It's called Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu. I'm so behind on this. Mark Spector is alive now. There's no point me really talking about this. This is the aftermath of the death of Moon Knight, the death of Mark Spector, and I'm so behind on this that now Mark Spector is back. He came back during Blood Hunt, in one of the most epic scenes in comic books this year, if we're going to talk about comics this year, one of the most epic scenes this year. But yeah, I'm enjoying this like I've been enjoying the most of Jed MacKay's Moon Knight stuff. Phases of the Moon Knights I forgot to get out, and I'm not gonna get it out now. But that will go in somewhere because it's a mini. But I've read 3 issues. It's not finished yet. All the other minis are finished. That I've got in the mini pile. I don't know where I would put that, so I'm just going to say that it's an anthology book, so I don't feel right rating it alongside other books. That being said, it has consistently been engaging, and all the stories have been decent in there. And apparently, the last issue is going to converge all of the stories that have been in the last 3 issues, and it's going to like come together basically like the Beatles. It's going to come together. like that weird episode of the Ninja Turtles where they met the Power Rangers. It's gonna be like that. But yeah, Vengeance of the Moon Knight, it's good. It's not called Vengeance of the Moon Knight anymore. A new book has started. So yeah. Titans or Titans. I'm so behind on this. It doesn't say Dawn of DC on it anymore. I think it stopped saying Dawn of DC after issue 10, but or it stopped saying Dawn of DC. I think it's now called DC All In. All In, is that what it's called now? The new like kind of subtitle that DC is going through. Like, I don't know how to describe it, because it's just a thing that they're putting on the books now, that a lot of the books that they're having like insurgence of like new books. Like they've got a new like Absolute line, they've got like Black Lightning book, Question book, a new Justice League book. Meanwhile, the Titans, which were kind of operating as a pseudo Justice League, are now going back to basically what the Titans were before, which is just Justice League babies. But yeah, I've been enjoying this. The artwork has been putting me off, but I've been liking where this book has been going so far, and I like whenever Trigon's involved in the Titans thing. I just like these characters, and I like seeing them interact. And it's a lot darker of a book than I expected it to be. But I'm not against that in any way. We then have Immortal Thor, which I'm also behind on. But yeah, I've flip-flopped on this. I've gone from loving it to despising it to now kind of just being a bit bored by it. I want to keep up with it because where I've seen that it's now going, like the next issues, like where I'm at with it now is just before the team up with Hercules. So I love a bit of Hercules. I always love Hercules. I like it when he shows up in stuff. So, and seeing Thor and Hercules kind of bounce off each other, because you can just tell that Thor has no patience for his bullshit. I always like seeing that kind of relationship happen, this kind of like buddy thing going on. I like that. So hopefully this book kind of goes back to being good again. But how inconsistent this book has been quality-wise, and this is kind of Al Ewing to a T, how I've always felt with his books, is that there will be like a couple of issues for you, and then a couple of issues for him, and then a couple of issues that feel like he's been told to write it. He's been told, like, we have this thing that we need to clear up. Do you want to do it in your Immortal Hulk book? Do you want to do it in your Thor book? Do you want to do it in this book? And break your story that you're trying to tell and just put this in instead. And that's what he does. So yeah, I'm not quite sure on Immortal Thor at the moment. I don't love the book, but I don't dislike it enough, and I'm not having a bad enough time with it to consider dropping it. But I am kind of like at that point where if the next few issues continue like those last 2 issues were, then I'm probably done with the book. Flipping over to a completely different side, Superman, I'm still about an arc behind on this, but it's the perfect Superman book. It's everything Superman should be. Zack Snyder, here you go. This is what Man of Steel, or your Superman movie, should have been, and this is what I hope James Gunn's Superman movie ends up being. It won't be, because this is so recent, but I do still have more faith that his Superman will be more akin to that, because of what he's been sharing on social media, and because Krypto's in it. Krypto's just in the movie. I don't love the idea of putting so many other characters in a Superman movie, or in the first one, in your universe. Like, imagine if all of the Avengers just showed up in Iron Man 1. That would kind of perturb me, but James Gunn loves playing with an ensemble cast. He can't just have one character in it, but also I have faith that James Gunn will make this a Superman movie through and through, even though there are quite a few other characters also appearing. But I hope, A, they don't kill off Guy Gardner, because it's a perfect casting for Guy Gardner. Not the perfect casting, but it is a perfect casting. He also fits the same age range as the rest of the Green Lanterns that they've chosen. Apart from Jon Stewart, who is notedly younger than the rest of them, so he's probably going to be the main character of that Lantern show. Next up, another book that I'm behind on, very much behind on, Iron Man, the Invincible Iron Man. I'm so behind on this that it's gone back to number 1, and that new number 1, that new series, is on issue 2 this month. I really like this Duggan run, and I cannot wait to finish it. I'm very excited to see how this finishes, and this is also the only X-Men book that I'm reading and have read, and you know, it's good because this is my only this is the only exposure I have to Emma Frost at the moment as well, and who doesn't like a bit of exposure to Emma Frost? Sounds like a weird, like, storm. We just had a power out over the weekend, and that was caused by Storm frickin' Bert. Emma Frost sounds like a different variation of that, like Storm Bert's wife or something. But anyway, Tony Stark Iron Man, or not Tony Stark Iron Man, The Invincible Iron Man is a really good book that everyone should be picking up. I know that a lot of people probably are on the new series by now, and I hopefully will be come January. But very good book. Very good book. Then we talk about The Flash. Very behind on The Flash as well, just because that number 10 just keeps, just will not be found. But it's unlike Evan Hansen, it won't be found. It's a little musical humour for you musical fans. I know a lot of musical fans have come out of the woodwork following the release of Wicked. There's a little musical humour for you guys. You better appreciate it. There better be people who get that joke in the comments. Just let me know if you get the joke in the comments. You haven't made it this far in the video. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. The Flash is good. It continues to be good. I like that the art has changed. It's not Mike Deodato Jr. anymore, so you can actually see what's going on. It's not covered in shadow anymore. Sorry, I just really dislike Mike Deodato Jr. Yeah, he's just not my cup of tea. And then you've got The Avengers, a book that has only now kind of taken the training wheels off and is just going at full speed. And it turns out all it needed to do was tie into other events at Marvel, and it then finally becomes, weirdly enough, attaching itself to The Fall of X and attaching itself to Blood Hunt is what has given this book an identity and made this book kind of feel really good. Again, Jed MacKay, out of every book that he's doing at the moment, I know his X-Men has been a bit contentious, to say the least. I think Avengers has been his weakest book so far. His Doctor Strange was okay for me personally. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it either. But his Avengers has been the one that I've been waiting to go somewhere, and now it kind of is. I'm just a bit perturbed. There's a good word for you. I'm a bit annoyed that it's taken to tie in with other books that Avengers has decided to get good now. But again, I'm not going to get too bummed out about it, because it just means there's another good book to look forward to, instead of just a meh Avengers book. We're then going into the minis. The minis, I'm going to be slightly harsher on the minis than I have anything else, because A, all of these are finished, so I have a clear-cut opinion on them, and B, more of these than less of them are not great. And we're going to start off with Thanos, the Mad Titan, or I think the book's just called Thanos, but every issue has a different subheading, and this felt like an all-ages reader's book that for some reason is rated as parental advisory, but things that happen in this book are so silly. Like, Thanos gets in a car, which is so weird. But I really just don't understand the point of this. I think where it ends up is nowhere near as interesting as kind of what the first issue set up. The first issue was so good, and I said this in the last one of these that I did for last year. If Thanos continued as good as this first issue was, then I would be fully on board with it, and it would probably be very high on my rating. This, however, just took a nosedive into the bin with the next issue, and I'm a Cantwell fan. I like Christopher Cantwell. I loved his Iron Man book. I loved his Hellcat book. I haven't read his Plastic Man, but I'm sure it's great. But this just doesn't have any of the hallmarks of a good Christopher Cantwell book, and it doesn't do anything that I loved those other books for doing. It's not like a deep dive into mental health. It's just kind of, let's see these characters fight. let's have Hulk fight, let's have Thanos fight Hulk, because that's cool, isn't it? Let's have Thanos fight a new version of the Illuminati with characters that you don't care about, or that aren't interesting, or the characters that don't really make sense going together. Let's have Thanos fight Death, because that's cool, isn't it? Or let's have the final issue cover, which is the coolest thing I've ever seen, be a complete lie. And let's have the book just not end. Let's have the book just not properly end either. I do not recommend Thanos to anyone. I would not put it on my worst enemy to read that book. It's just dull and boring, and I hate it for Christopher Cantwell, because I know he is a good writer. He's one of my favourites working at Marvel at the moment, and unfortunately he just has written one of the worst books I think I've read in my nearly a decade of collecting comics, week to week. That is just, I think Thanos might be the worst thing I've read. Which might sound quite bad, or may sound quite dramatic, but it ain't a good book. It really ain't a good book. Ghost Rider Final Vengeance is almost more insulting, because not only does this come out of nowhere, not only do I not really know why this was written, why this was made, also, I don't remember a thing that happens in this book. I don't remember a thing that happens in any of the 6 issues. The audacity of this book being 6 issues when so many other good concepts are relegated to 4. The Dracula book is only 3. This is double. Sorry, this is double that length. What? What are you... Benjamin Percy, what did you have to say here? What did you have to say that was so deep and meaningful that it needed 6 issues? I'm sorry for being so angry at this comic book, but this comic book that I have forgotten the contents of, to be honest. But it cannot have been that good that it hasn't stuck with me. And this was only a couple months ago that I finished this series as well. It was only a couple of months ago that I did a video on this. There's another book as well. I did a video on that. I did a video on something else. Is it here? Frickin' Green Lantern. I know I did a video on Green Lantern as well. What the fuck else did I do a video on? Doctor Strange? I did a video on Doctor Strange. Was that the 3rd book in that video? Was it Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, and Green Lantern War Journal? If it was, then, my memory is shite. My memory is shocking if that's the case. But yeah, we're going to talk about next book, Daredevil Woman Without Fear. I like this for having more, Joe Garrison. More Joe Garrison Punisher. I like that. I think it's clever that both Punishers, their names are military buildings. Frank Castle, Joe Garrison. The next one's going to be like Mike Fortress or something. But yeah, the actual Elektra stuff is fine. The Elektra going to Bloodhaven, or anyone going to Bloodhaven, is always fun to see. A Daredevil versus a Punisher is always fun to see. And I think having it be Elektra fighting Joe Garrison is interesting as well. The actual plot of this is so nonsensical, and, you know, Elektra goes to Bloodhaven to save this girl who's been kidnapped, but it turns out she was actually kidnapped by her aunt. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So Elektra goes to Bloodhaven to save this girl who's actually... Sorry about that. Elektra's gone to Bloodhaven to save this girl who's been kidnapped by her aunt, and it's still in New York, by the way. She's not even in Bloodhaven, so this whole side quest to Bloodhaven, almost getting killed by the Magia, having a fight with Crossbones, having to team up with, after trying to kill Joe Garrison, Punisher, is all for nothing, essentially. And the book ends with this girl deciding, oh, I'm going to stay with my aunt anyway, because she beat up someone that was trying to break into the house. This book doesn't really have a point or a purpose. I think it's maybe set up for the next Daredevil mini, or Elektra Daredevil mini anyways. But it's kind of just, what is Elektra doing now that she's not in the main Daredevil book? And essentially it's just going on wild goose chases. So yeah, the book is fun, and it's fun to see a different Punisher fighting a different Daredevil. And that's an interesting thing to see. And seeing this character who used to be an assassin try and basically worm her way out of, or trying to justify her argument for not killing, and Joe Garrison basically having the point of, you used to be an assassin, you don't have a leg to stand on here. So it's a fun book in that regard. It's just the actual story of it is a bit silly and a bit pointless. It's a bit Saturday morning cartoon in that regard. Not that the actual contents of it would be in a Saturday morning cartoon, even though I think Punisher was in that 90s Spider-Man show. I think he was in that. Maybe. Maybe he was in it. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. And then we have Avengers Inc. Avengers Inc. is another one that I've kind of forgotten what happened in it. But I think the final issue is the reason why it's here. Just the idea of putting this team together, and it taking basically 5 issues to put together a Avengers team, which is mostly just ant people, I think is really cool. The reveal of who this Vision bloke is kind of fun. The reveal that it is an Ultron, and this whole thing being an Ultron story anyway is fun. It is interesting, and the reveal of the villain being Hank Pym, but him not actually being a villain. Yeah, I liked this book for the most part. I thought it was really interesting, but it did kind of leave me to be like, I just wish this was an ongoing. I really wish this was a longer story. I wanted it to go on for a bit longer. I wanted, once the team got together, for there to be more book afterwards. Unfortunately, there wasn't. So it was fun while it lasted. I just wish it lasted a little bit longer than it actually did. Maybe give it up to 7 issues instead of 5. We then have Absolute Power Task Force 7. I really like this. Basically every issue dealt with a different one of these kind of android robot Amazo things, fighting a different superhero or team of superheroes. And as that would, and the backup being about Steve Trevor kind of dealing with Amanda Waller and what she's doing as a companion piece to Absolute Power. This is just really a solid companion piece. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it would. Anyway, normally these kind of books I wouldn't pick up in general, but this found its way into my pull list anyways. So I just decided, why not? Bought it and bought the rest of them. And then, yeah, it just ended up being a pretty fun, just a really fun few issues. Yeah, it was just a solid 7-issue jaunt watching all of your favourite superheroes be beaten to a pulp by Amazo robots. It's just a bit of fun, just a bit of light reading. We then have Punisher. Not a lot of people probably remember this coming out this year, but this is a 4-issue mini that started in, I believe, December. I believe the first issue came out in December of last year, and continued all the way to March, I believe. So a very early book, and the fact that it's my second favourite mini of the year, beaten off by beaten by only one other mini-series, which I think is fairly obvious at this point if you've been reading any comics this year. But Punisher was really good. It made a lasting impact. And the only issue that I have with this is that it's 4 issues. It wasn't an ongoing series. I would have loved to see more of this. It's just unfortunate that I think it was slightly rushed to the finish line. But I'm a big Punisher fan. I'm a big Frank Castle fan. I thought it was going to take me a lot longer to get into this new character of Joe Garrison. But it didn't. I was pretty much hook, line and sinker from the first issue, and I like that he's showing up in different things. I like that he seems to be a character that is staying. I don't know what's going to happen to him when Frank Castle comes back, because obviously he's coming back. Comic books are cyclical like that and everything. So maybe there's going to be a big War of the Punishers event. I don't think Joe Garrison has made enough of an impact to justify that, but Marvel likes money, and they might like making events for the sake of making events. So there might be just a big War of the Punishers event, street level type thing that will cross over into maybe Daredevil. Maybe there might be a Luke Cage book that spins out of that. Might spin into Spider-Man as well. Just to justify relaunching a load of other street level books, like giving Luke Cage ongoing because he deserves one, giving Iron Fist another ongoing because he deserves one as well. Yeah, I may have just Marvel hire me. I will write a War of the Punishers book, and I will make several other books to spin out of that. And obviously one of them will be a new main Punisher book as well. My favourite mini of the year, to nobody's surprise, was Blood Hunt. It will probably would have been Absolute Power. Far be it for me, a clear Marvel fan, to have put the DC event at number one of his book rankings of the year. But I loved Absolute Power. But this I've finished, so it beats it. Only because I finished it, but also because this is an event. This is the quintessential perfect way to do an event. It's got tie-ins. Do you need them? Fuck no. You basically just need to read Blood Hunt, and you can read the rest of the books that you were reading, and some of them might tie in, most of them won't, and the ones that do tie in, it's stuff that would have happened in those books anyway, or it's not really breaking the flow. The tie-in in Avengers deals with a completely different team, and the team that's in Avengers is taken off the board in this, so the team that's in the main Avengers book is completely different. In Fantastic Four, it's just about Reed, and those were one and dones anyway, so it doesn't matter. And those two Blood Hunt issues in Fantastic Four are the two best Fantastic Four issues of the year for me personally. But I'm really excited for where this book takes the Marvel Universe going forward. I'm really excited for World Under Doom. And yeah, really liked Blood Hunt. It's events this year, I feel, because that was the big Marvel one. I know Marvel's got Venom War at the moment anyway. I'm not excited about Venom War. I dropped the Al Ewing Venom book anyways, mainly because I got over 20 issues behind on it. So yeah, I got very behind on Venom War. I know Black Widows have got a symbiote now. What the fuck is up with that? It's just a weird book, and it was a weird book when I was reading it. It's a weird book still now. But yeah, I'm not into that, but the events that I have read this year, that and Absolute Power, both of them incredible. Both of them were pretty spectacular. I feel like maybe if Blood Hunt came out a couple of months after it did, would have been even better. But, you know, it ended around the Halloween time, so yeah, I really had a good time with Blood Hunt. Speaking of books I did not have a good time with, we're now leading into ongoings, both ongoings that are still ongoing and ongoings that are finished. And the first ongoing I'm going to talk about after I take a sippy sip Fantastic Four. A lot of people are really liking this book, and I'm glad that it's almost at 30. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm excited that a Fantastic Four book gets to 30. But I don't know if it's my cup of tea. However, I do think Fantastic Four, looking at solicitations, looking at where the Marvel Universe is going forward, and Doctor Doom being such a big player going forward, especially because he's going to be in a new movie, played by Iron Man, which is so weird to me. I don't like that choice personally, but you know, shit happens, I guess. It is what it is. I can't change the fact that, Doctor Doom will not be played by a Romani, but instead will be played by the villain in Oppenheimer. Instead it's being played by Sherlock Holmes. I can't change the fact that Doctor Doom is not going to be played by... That is instead being played by the most charismatic human being alive, basically. I'm sure he can sell it, because Robert Downey Jr. could sell me cocaine. But that's the worst joke I've ever made in my life. I think, possibly. But yeah, Fantastic Four is technically a good book if you like one and dones. I don't. I always like it when this book has like a 2-issue arc. And that's the longest arcs you get with this too. I liked the Blood Hunt tie-in that this had. I wasn't a huge fan of everything else that this book did. It just seems to be... I'm still waiting for that arc. I'm still waiting to feel something for these characters going forward. I actually liked number 25, but the problem with this is because each issue is a one and done, sometimes I'm not going to like it, and sometimes I am going to like it. Every issue is... there's no consistency with Fantastic Four. However, leading into World Under Doom, that is going to... the whole Doctor Doom stuff is going to affect Fantastic Four in a big way, and the Fantastic Four are going to be bigger deals in the Marvel Universe going forward. And I'm very excited for that. I really want this series to kind of ramp up and get really good. And I hope this time next year, talking about Fantastic Four, I'm going to be a lot more positive on the book, because unfortunately at the moment I'm not the most positive about it. We then have Doctor Strange, which is finished, and yeah, I just think this was probably the weakest Jed MacKay book, even though this is the one that I have all of. It's not my favourite, and it might be the weakest Doctor Strange I've read for a while. I'm excited for a new creative team. I like that everything kind of gets wrapped up in a nice little bow. This final issue, issue 18, is actually good. It's a good, final issue, and it does leave you with, excitement for the next run, but it feels like this run has been tied up in a neat little bow. I just don't know if I cared about everything that happened in this run specifically. I don't know if I cared about the General Strange stuff. I don't know if I cared about all the stuff with his brother and being put into the Crypt of Shadows. I don't know if I cared about the weird, Baron Mordo board game stuff. The weird, going into a D&D thing. I would have loved if that, those 2 issues, if that was allowed to be 3, maybe 4. If that was 4 issues, then this book would have gotten to issue 20. And that would have been perfect. That would have been great. Who doesn't love a book getting to issue 20? Unfortunately, this book just kind of didn't grab me with anything until the final issue. The final issue did kind of make me feel things. However, it's a bit too little too late, unfortunately. And, if that book had ended later on in the year, maybe I would have had more positive opinions on it. But I think because so many other books have come out since, and I've read so much since, that's just been buried by so many other things that I have enjoyed a lot more. Not a lot more, but more is Captain America. This was a book that was really high last year, but that was back when it was in its first arc. Now we're a couple of arcs deep. The second arc was a bit of a snooze fest. This most recent issue, I haven't read, but I read the one before it, starting the team up between Captain America, Spider-Man and Thor. Excellent cover, by the way. All of the covers for it look amazing. All of these Captain America covers have been amazing so far. But I'm more on board with that than I was kind of the middle chunk of this run. And the fact that it's ending after that arc, I'm not surprised. This book has kind of just been turning its wheels and not really going anywhere for basically 6 issues now. And even the new arc that's just started, it's not a Captain America book. It feels like J. Michael Straczynski has gotten onto a Captain America book and wants any excuse to not write Captain America. So he's put 2 characters that he prefers, Spider-Man and Thor, into it as well, and he's made it a Secret Thor book. I don't understand why he didn't just decide, hey, I want Thor, I want to finish my Thor story, because I have a pitch for Thor that was basically my old pitch for Thor that I didn't get to finish. I don't think Captain America's bad. I just don't think it's great either. There are so many other books this year that were so much better and that have been so much better and so much more consistent. One of those books is Blue Beetle, and it is really the final issue that kind of drags it down a little bit more. Just because I feel like ending a book at issue 11 feels a bit sketchy to me, personally. Also with that, it felt rushed. It felt rushed to get to the end of the second arc, and it felt rushed. It felt rushed to end an arc after 3 issues, and it felt even more rushed to have one issue of basically tying everything up that wasn't an extended issue, that wasn't like a few more pages. It was just a regular sized issue of wrapping everything up for this run. Maybe I would have been more positive on the conclusion of this. It's not a conclusion, it's just catch us next week on Blue Beetle when there won't be a next week because the show's been cancelled. And it does feel like this is a book that was cancelled, not a book that was finished. It feels like this was a book that was meant to be so many more issues than it actually was. Which is unfortunate because the book was going somewhere interesting and I was really enjoying the ride. It's just sometimes a book comes out and you're enjoying it and not a lot of other people are, and it's not making enough money, so it just it just ends. A lot of people that are fans of watching shows on Netflix know that pain, so now this is the first book that I've kind of been really loving and on board with that has been cancelled at a time where it didn't feel right to cancel it. It's just unfortunate. So that's my first kind of like comic book heartbreak. And a lot of people, and sometimes maybe it's a good thing to experience it young. You know, with most heartbreaks, it's a good thing to get your first one in young, so therefore the next one won't hurt as bad. Or the next one won't be as traumatic an experience. That being said, the rest of the books are great to excellent. And starting off, I'm going to talk about the Ultimates. This is my least favourite Ultimate book of the bunch. I'm not reading X-Men just because Peach Momoko isn't my cup of tea, but this is my least favourite. But in terms of the Ultimate books, all of them are good. I've heard really good things about X-Men. Like I said, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not big on Peach Momoko in general, but this book, as far as an Ultimates book is concerned, it's getting into it a lot quicker than any other, than certainly Mark Millar's first go around with the Ultimates. We're 6 issues in and stuff has happened, which is more than I can say for the first go around at the Ultimates, where there were 6 issues in and they fought the Hulk and Hank Pym was abusive to his wife, sprayed her with bug spray and chucked her in the bin. It's not funny. It's an extreme, basically an issue of co-domestic abuse, where both of them, where Hank is obviously the worst of the two, but Janet is not an innocent in that situation. She does hit him in the face with a briefcase, so there is like, it's co-pathetic abuse on both sides in that. But you know, spraying your wife with bug spray while she's the size of a wasp and chucking her in the bin is not okay in any regard. I hope you watching that know that. None of that in the Ultimates. Hank Pym is a normal, adjusted person who may or may not have brain damage. But yeah, everyone feels like a character. But I'm going to be completely honest, by the time issue 6 comes around and we see the full lineup, I didn't realise that the Human Torch had been introduced. You know, I kind of forgot about that part. I didn't realise that had happened. So yeah, they do kind of skip over like a character introduction, which is weird to me. But also, I don't think this Ultimates team is the Ultimates team that will be at the end of the 12 months, because Tony's dead. She-Hulk doesn't have a hand. I like the idea of mixing Hulk and Iron Fist. I don't think Hulk needed to be turned into an Iron Fist. And I don't think it makes him scarier. It makes him scarier giving him a brain and also making him a Buddhist. That makes him scary, and having basically a whole army of Buddhist Hulks kind of is interesting, and I like that idea. And I like seeing the team kind of be torn to shreds, essentially. Yeah, the whole thing with the Ultimate line is that these characters aren't good at their job. These people aren't good at being superheroes. You know, Spider-Man has yet to actually beat a villain 10 issues into his run. The Ultimates got their ass kicked by the Hulks. I think they beat Captain Britain, who's French, in this universe. But yeah, I like this series. I like where it's going. I don't think that this team of the Ultimates is going to make it to the end of the 12 years, though. I think we're going to see a different team at the end of the 12 years. Because not only that, but the Ultimate version of the Guardians of the Galaxy is meant to be making an appearance at some point soon. So I'm interested to see that. I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm enjoying the other Ultimate books more. Probably because they're deeper in as well. Green Lantern War Journal finished earlier this year, and I loved it. It's the Green Lantern book I decided to pick up, and it's so good. I'm not going to spoil any of it because it is amazing. it deals with dementia in a way that feels real for a superhero, like, high-flying, sci-fi story. It tackles dementia in a way that is really, like, mature. And this is what I mean about my point that I made earlier in the video. There does seem to be this kind of weird snobbiness around comic books, and them not and them being just a throwaway thing, or just being like a bit of fun, or like a light thing. And yeah, that is true for most comic books, but they can say something, and they can do something and have, a message that does teach you about the world, or make you think differently about people. And I think differently about people after reading this book. This book kind of changed my perception on what living with someone with dementia is like. And yeah, I really like this book for that reason. Obviously, the action, when it is going on, it hits really hard, and it does work really well. Jon Stewart as a character is just good to have around, and he's a really good protagonist, and he's a lot of people's favourite Green Lantern, and he's probably my favourite Green Lantern as well. For that reason, he's just a good guy. He's just a nice guy, People like him. People want to be around him. So, there you go. The Incredible Hulk. This was a book I put very low at the bottom of my ranking last year. And now it's certainly one of the best books at Marvel. It's in the top 4 of my books of the year. This is amazing. This is an Incredible Hulk series. No pun intended. But yeah, I don't want to spoil it again, because 18 issues of Hulk, 18 inches of Hulk. Yeah, there's just too much to get into. Just this kind of like road trip Stephen King-esque Hulk way of doing Hulk is really interesting, and I'm really on board to this way of doing it. My only gripe with this book, and the only reason why it's not higher, is the art changes. Not saying that that either artist is bad. When it's Nick Klein, it's fantastic. When it's the other artist, which I'm so sorry I haven't learnt the name of yet, it's not as good, but it's not bad. It still fits the tone of being like a horror comic, but it doesn't... it's not Nick Klein, is what I'm trying to say. We then have Daredevil. Daredevil is my number 3 pick of the year. A lot of people have dropped this, understandably, because it's not the Chip Zdarsky run. It never claimed to be the Chip Zdarsky run. However, I love me some Daredevil. I always will. He's my favorite. He's my favorite comic book character. I just really like this series. I like the direction. I like the idea of having him fight the 7 deadly sins. Putting biblical characters, or having religious themes in Daredevil stories is always a fun thing for me. It always makes the character feel a little bit different, feel a little bit nuanced, and it gives kind of credence to Matt being Christian, and especially now where he is probably at his most religious, after having been brought back to life and now being a real man of the church, and having even more responsibilities than he's had before. I feel like everything about this book is just done really well. It's just, unfortunately, 2 more books this year came out that are just really consistently almost flawless. And actually, my number 2, which I just switched on the fly just then, Ultimate Spider-Man is my number 2 pick of the year. And the reason why this is my number 2 pick of the year and not number 1, the artwork changes. When it's freaking Marco Cicchetto, I didn't need to get the comic out. I've just wasted some of the tape stickiness for no reason. Marco Cicchetto. When it's Marco Cicchetto, it's perfect. It's a perfect book. This is the best book coming out on shelves. It's the best looking book, the best written book. This is essentially the closest to an actual soap opera that comic books have been in my time of reading them. Maybe back in the heyday of Chris Claremont, X-Men felt like a proper, like, sequential storyline affair, but this feels like world building 101. This feels like laying the groundwork for a universe and making you care about every character wholeheartedly. Like, I care about Jonah, I care about Ben, I care about Peter, obviously, I care about Harry, which I never did in the main universe. I care about Peter's kids, I care about Mary Jane. I don't necessarily care about Gwen Stacy because she is portrayed as a little bit of an asshole in this. But I think that's by design. And by design, I'm creeped out by Otto. I think you're meant to be, for obvious reasons, because it's Otto Octavius. And you can kind of infer where that character is going to go. But there's weirdness surrounding where these characters are going to go. But yeah, this is easily the best book coming off the shelves. If you're looking at it from just a writing perspective, the only problem with this is that artists kind of flip in and out, because Marco Cicchetto is so good. He does need those couple of issues to just perfect his work, and I don't mind that. It's just I have to rank these fairly. And my favourite book of the year is Ultimate Black Panther. I know a double bill of Ultimate books, but that is just how good the Ultimate line has been. I'm really looking forward to Ultimate Wolverine, which should really be called Ultimate Winter Soldier, because he's both. And I don't think we're going to get an Ultimate Bucky anytime soon. But I hope that the Ultimate line continues into, I hope it goes on for as long, if not longer, than the previous Ultimate line. Ultimate Black Panther is the best one, though. I cannot wait for this character to meet up with the rest of the Ultimates. I can't wait for that big event that is being teased in all of these books. This does feel like the most separated from the rest of the line, because no Iron Man has shown up yet. We don't even know if Tony gave T'Challa that suit, or if Vibranium ended up in Wakanda for any reason. Like, if we're to believe from the Spider-Man book, the reason why some characters are different and some characters are the same is because some characters were looked at by the maker and were like, I don't care about you. You can stay the same. And then other characters were looked at by the maker, like Spider-Man, and were like, you don't get powers at all. I have to make sure that you don't get anything. Captain America, you're still in the ice and no one will know that you're there. You'll die frozen and alone. Was that the same for Black Panther? Because Black Panther is an intrinsically Fantastic Four character. Like, he appeared in those books first. He's, got a deep friendship with Reed. He's been a member of the Illuminati. Is that what actually happened to make Wakanda what it is in this book? Why? And that's what is most interesting to me, is why are these characters where they are? That being said, the actual plot in this, having Moon Knight be a terrorist organization and having it be the villain of a Black Panther book, having, Moon Knight and Black Panther are characters that should really cross paths more often, because they do both worship a god that is an animal, but represents the night, or represents something. Bast, obviously the Panther god, and you've got Khonshu, who is the god of the moon. Having those characters kind of interact more in this universe feels correct to me. It feels like it makes sense. The only problem for me with this book is I don't necessarily care about Moon Knight, and this book doesn't really make sense when you think about it in terms of the reveals in Ultimate Spider-Man. However, the book is still very high quality, and it's the best book coming out, and it's Brian Hill, who did a fantastic Blade run and is doing a fantastic Blade mini. So far, only one issue's come out, but it was a fantastic first issue. So, yeah, Ultimate Black Panther is still my favourite book of the year. It's my favourite book of 2024, anyway, because I think it was Punisher last year, which was fantastic, by the way. That previous Fantastic Four run, the Jason Aaron one, fantastic. But Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther, has been incredible, in my opinion. It's been so good. That's been my, that has been me ranking every book I read this past year. I've been recording for over an hour in separate chunks, but I've been recording for over an hour. So this video will be very, very long. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what the best book is of the year in your opinion. And also let me know if you are a comic book reader, if you're also a book reader, where you think the line is drawn, where you think the kind of snobbiness and the segregation between comic book readers and book readers comes from. And I will see you guys in the next video. I was going to get a tier list video out, but for some reason the tier list that I had created for Disney Speedstorm characters, half of it's gone missing. I cannot be bothered to go finding pictures for half of the Disney Speedstorm roster again. So I think I might just do a top 5 Disney Speedstorm characters in a video. I was going to do a different type of tier list because I just haven't unlocked every character. A lot of characters are locked behind paywalls now, and I don't like the way that game is being set up. And I may, like, part of what Thankmas is going to be all about is just seeing if I can go a month without Disney Speedstorm. Seeing if I can last a month without that game and don't need to make videos about it, or stream it for a month and see how the channel does with a month of no Disney Speedstorm, especially when probably one of the most anticipated or most anticipated seasons is coming out. I'm basically just going to play that all in my spare time. But what I want from that is basically just to see if I can go a more variety route with the channel. Because I love doing comic book videos. I wish I could do more. I love doing, like, videos about Mortal Kombat. It's just recording those seems to be a ball ache. But yeah, I wish I just could play more games, and this is more of an experiment to see if people are interested in seeing more games on the channel, more different games on the channel. So yeah, I will see you guys then. But yeah, let me know what your favourite comics of the year have been. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.